So in taking us further in this amazing expose is a child nutritionist, Mr. Nkwoala Chiaka Charles. Please, may you be upstanding, sir, as I read your citation. Mr. Nkwoala is a community nutritionist with expertise in nutrition education. He's presently a lecturer and PhD candidate at Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Nigeria. He has been involved in several community-based nutrition education activities, facilitating voluntary adoption of healthy eating behaviors and lifestyle at the individual and community levels, while building the capacity of health professionals. He facilitated the training of infant and young child feeding counselors and breastfeeding support groups on mid-upper arm circumference measurement in Abia and Anambra states. And he has actually done a lot of work in Abia State, in the East, in building capacity in childhood nutrition. So he's a trailblazer in that regard. Mr. Nkwoala is an active member of several national and international professional societies, including Nutrition Society of Nigeria, Nutrition Society United Kingdom, Society for Nutrition Education and Behavior USA, and Nigerian Institute of Food Science and Technology. He is the immediate past National General Secretary and currently the National Financial Secretary of the Nutrition Society of Nigeria. Charles was featured in the Nutrition Society UK Gazette Winter 2021 and FAO World Food Day celebrations in Rome. He also serves in several research and administrative committees at the university, state, and national levels. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Charles Nkwoala.
And welcome everyone. I hope we are not actually tired, are we? Are we tired? No, after the last presentation, I don't think anybody that wants to sleep will sleep. I think it was quite an interesting presentation. I'm going to talk on the urgent need to invest in early childhood nutrition, the best practices. Now, the last two presenters have actually built the foundation. When two professors have presented, what do you expect I should say? I will just add to what they have presented. So I'm going to draw inference from the previous presentations on malnutrition as a problem. I will still look at the trends in the indices, which has been presented by the first presenter. Then we'll look at the causes of malnutrition. So some of these things that I will just emphasize on them and we'll move on. Maternal malnutrition are pregnancy and poor infant and young child feeding practices. The causes of malnutrition. I will still go into why invest in early childhood nutrition. Because if we don't present something in Naira and Kobo or in cedis, we are not saying anything. Then, lastly, we'll talk about how we prevent childhood malnutrition. Now, the consequences of childhood malnutrition, Prof has already emphasized on this. And we have also seen it that it's not only about growth, but also about development, the brain development. So the first 5 years are considered critical for linear growth and early childhood development, which we have established that by the previous presentations. Now, the impact on the nutrition impacts on child's immune function. Prof stated this, and the reduced immunity will lead to risk of disease, and when there is an infection, it will also lead to increased energy demands and increased demand for nutrients that will now exacerbate the nutrition status and also lead to malnutrition. Now, the forms of malnutrition, Prof looked at it as the different forms. We still need to understand that micronutrient deficiency is a very important problem among children, especially the iron deficiency anemia, which we have seen that iron is an important nutrient for child development. Nutritional stunting due to poor living environments is estimated to affect about 178 million children, mostly under 5 children, in developing countries, and is the most prevalent form of malnutrition. So when we look at indices, or when we look at factors and focus on stunting, it's because of the important nature of stunting in affecting growth and development, and even in the impact in adults. Now the trends, if we look at these trends, we'll see that in Nigeria and in Ghana, the trend looks like we are making improvement. In Nigeria, there is some progress, 4.1% decline from 2008 to 2020. In Ghana, they are on course. That means they have exceeded where Nigeria is, and they have had 12.9% decline in stunting from 2008 to 2020. Also, in childhood wasting, both Nigeria and Ghana are on, and they are making some progress. 6.8% of children are wasted, while in Nigeria, 6.5% are wasted. So, and the average for African region is 6.0%. So we are above the average, which we need to do more work on that. Prevalence of anemia among children. You find out that both Nigeria and Ghana, we seem to be brothers and sisters. We are very close. 66% of total anemia among under 5 children in Ghana, and 68% in Nigeria. So we need to do things. When we look at these percentages, it looks like numbers, but we are talking about the number of children. More than half of our children are predisposed to having problems while growing. We need to do something about this. And I believe that's why FrieslandCampina Institute had to make this occasion so as to create our awareness and also ginger us, let me use that word, to do something in our little and local environment. Now, when we look at the severe acute malnutrition in Nigeria, you find out that UNICEF have emphasized that about 2.5 million children in Nigeria suffer from SAM, severe acute malnutrition. And I believe that most of us are in health system here, and you have seen them. If you have not seen them in Lagos, those that are not in Lagos must have seen that this is real. There is severe acute malnutrition. And there is a whole lot of investment in trying to tackle this. $11 million to $21 million have been spent in Nigeria on ready-to-use therapeutic foods. And these are all, they are just an emergency situation that you are dealing with. And these children come back with the relapse when they go back to their homes. So we have problem, and we need to work on that. Now, causes of childhood malnutrition. We have seen that childhood malnutrition doesn't start when the child is born. It starts from the time the conception takes place. And unfortunately, to be very frank, many women don't even know when they have conceived until about a month or 2 months later. What it means is that if we are not conscious enough, and a woman that is malnourished gets pregnant without any intervention, the child is already predisposed to malnutrition. So we are seeing that from pregnancy 0 to 9 months, we have a problem there, poor maternal nutrition. Then after the child is born, if you don't exclusively breastfeed the child, you have sentenced the child to lifelong imprisonment. And if you do not give appropriate complementary foods, there is a problem. And if the child is not breastfed, up to 2 years or beyond, don't think that you are doing that child a favor. You are actually making that child to be miserable in the future. And we have to understand the implication of that. So all these cumulates to poor infant and young child feeding practices. That is, no exclusive breastfeeding from birth to 6 months, and inappropriate complementary feeding without continuing breastfeeding from 6 months to 2 years. All cumulate to poor infant and young child feeding. Now, let's look at the poor breastfeeding practices. Studies have shown that inappropriate breastfeeding practices are associated with severe malnutrition in under 5 children. It cannot be overemphasized. Exclusive breastfeeding is very important. But when we talk about exclusive breastfeeding, when does it start? If you have late initiation of breastfeeding, maybe after 1 hour of birth, the baby has not been put to breast, there is a problem. It's a poor breastfeeding practice. When you do not exclusively breastfeed the child for the first 6 months of life, you have not practiced appropriate breastfeeding practice. Discontinuation of breastfeeding after introduction of complementary food. Sometimes we think that weaning is like they do it with animals. You have weaned the child, oh, stop, I've started giving you pap. No, this child is entitled to that breast milk. Till during the time past, children breastfed more than 2 years. I remember that one of the reasons my mom changed my school in primary school, in primary 1, was that I would always leave my class and go to her class. And I'll always be wanting the breast. And my mom said, I cannot withstand this. So he had to transfer me to a school outside our environment. So, and he will always be saying that if I want, let me trek from Owerri back to Nekede to look for breast milk. And because of that, I tell you, I have 3 kids now, 3 of them exclusively breastfed. I have to tell my wife, you need to do that. Not breastfeeding up to 2 years and beyond is a problem. It's a poor breastfeeding practice. We may look at it, is this possible? These things are possible only if we have the commitment to do that. Now, trends in breastfeeding practice. If we look at the 2 countries, Nigeria and Ghana, there is something striking, which I always look at. From 1998 to 2008, Ghana doubled their exclusive breastfeeding rate. But from 2008 to 2017, they seem to have let loose. They seem to have dropped the ball. And there's no progress, and it's worsening. From 65.3%, you are going to 42.9%. It's not a good case. Nigeria seems to be doing well. But it's progress. When we look at the rate at 2018, you will find out that 28.7% of children are exclusively breastfed. What you ask yourself, this is below 50% of the children. You may think that you are progressing, but this is below 50%. Why can't we get to 100%? Why can't we get to that percent that we will say, yes, we are doing well? It's very much important that we do that. Now, early initiation of breastfeeding is still poor, and we need to do better. And continuation of breastfeeding for up to 2 years, we need to do better on that. Now, the breastfeeding pattern, yes, the major problem we have with breastfeeding is introduction of water. And I'll always ask them, those that argue that why can't you give a child water, I will ask them, what is the nutrient in water? Does water contain protein? Does water contain vitamins and minerals? Rather, water contains possibly microorganisms that can predispose the child to infection. And the child will be battling between growth and development and fighting infection. So water doesn't actually make the child grow tall or make the brain to develop, but rather we are endangering the child. The breast milk contains enough water that will sustain this child up to 6 months of life. We should know that, and we should appreciate that in the course of our practice. Now we'll go to poor complementary feeding. Once the child is entering 6 months, breast milk alone is not enough. We need to give the child complementary food. And what makes complementary food inappropriate? If we do not introduce complementary food at the right time, the child will be predisposed to malnutrition, which will affect the gains we have gotten during breastfeeding. Inadequate dietary diversity. Prof talked about dietary diversity. You have to give the child a minimum of 5 out of the 8 food groups for you to meet the minimum. Inadequate age-appropriate meal frequency. The child should eat the appropriate number of times, and also inadequate acceptable diet, which is a combination of minimum dietary diversity and minimum meal frequency. Now, these are the indicators for Nigeria and Ghana. And we'll see that when you look at these values, you find out that more than 50% of children are inappropriately fed, because the value shows you 26.1% in Ghana, 22.8%, 41.2%, 40.7%, 10.3%, 13.0%. These are below 50%. So what are we talking about? That more than half of our children will be sentenced to life poverty and unemployment because of poor cognitive development? We should think better and we should act better. Now, distribution of Nigerian children among this, from the infant and young child feeding practice guideline, you find out that out of the 8 groups, you have the animal source foods. And from research, animal source foods are poorly given to these children. So children in both countries, both in Ghana and in Nigeria, are not receiving appropriate animal source foods. And we know what the animal source foods are. We have the milk and dairy products, we have the egg, we have the meat, fish, and poultry. These are animal source foods and other milk, fortified, and other milk. These are animal source food that we should give to children that are growing, that have exceeded the exclusive breastfeeding group. Now, why do you have iron deficiency anemia? There are issues, we have noted them, that the iron deficiency anemia is very prevalent and the causes are there. And one of the major causes is inadequate intake of animal source foods. That need to invest in. We are going to talk about Naira and Kobo now. Let me get to this slide. Nutrition is at the heart of SDGs. And for every $1 you invest in nutrition, you are going to get $16 in returns. Why people feed their chicken better than they feed children is because they want to sell it. Because they want to make profit. Until we start understanding that feeding children well gets its own economic advantage, we will not do that. So there are researches and publications on the economic advantage of feeding children appropriately. And we will not hesitate to always recognize that. Now, like I have said, for every dollar is $16 in return. And we will reduce the level of stunting, we will reduce the level of anemia, and we will increase the level of breastfeeding and reduce the level of wasting if we invest in nutrition. The best practices. So much has been said about what we need to do, but I want to emphasize on this. From birth to 6 months, there is nothing we are talking about except breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding and continue breastfeeding for 2 years. Beyond 6 months, we are talking about encouraging breastfeeding beyond the 6 months, and also the minimum dietary diversity should be achieved, and the minimum meal frequency should be achieved. And we should encourage responsive feeding while practicing safe complementary feeding practices. This is WHO declaration, and we have to say that exclusive breastfeeding is necessary from 0 to 6 months of life. Thereafter, there is need for safe complementary foods while breastfeeding continues 6 months and beyond. This is for emphasis. We have to do that. Now, to achieve appropriate complementary feeding, these are the 8 food groups. Breast milk is important. It's one of the food groups. Breast milk is one of the food groups. There should be the target, timely introduction, minimum dietary diversity, minimum meal frequency, and minimum acceptable diet. And also, we should look at the frequency for consumption. Now, animal source food needs to be included in the complementary feeding. WHO stated that animal source feeds are the best available sources of high-quality, nutrient-rich food for children aged between 6 to 23 months. And we have to emphasize that. Now, real-world experience. What if the child have exceeded 2 years and have stopped breastfeeding? Should milk consumption stop? No. Milk consumption is very much important among children that have exceeded breastfeeding age, including school-age children. They need to consume milk and other dairy products. And we have researches that have identified the importance of dairy products in nutrition of children, even after they have stopped breastfeeding. Role of dairy in supporting child growth, the nutrients are there. The DHA that Prof talked about is also found in milk, which is an important aspect of growth and development. And it stimulates linear growth and also play an important factor in cognitive development. There are evidences towards that, and they are real-life experiences and evidence, even in the reduction of anemia, that milk consumption is important. So from breastfeeding exclusively to giving milk to children that are going to school feeding programs should have that, and also in our households, parents should know how to include milk economically in the diet of their children. Nutrition so the take-home messages. Nutrition in the early years of life is critical determinant of long-term health. Childhood nutritional practices in Nigeria are less than optimal. Undernutrition and malnutrition can lead to adverse consequences of growth, brain development, and immune function of a child. Investing in early life nutrition is a beneficial strategy that can yield long-term benefits. Exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, followed by introduction of age-appropriate complementary food in line with infant and young child guidelines. Infant and young child feeding guidelines are the best practices in early life nutrition. Beyond breastfeeding age, milk or fortified milk is an integral part of a child's diet and supports key development milestones. Maternal education and provision of appropriate nutritious complementary foods is a beneficial strategy to improve child development outcomes. So, references to show that we didn't just talk from our head. Thank you for your audience.